Hello, adventurers. Today, we follow the story of Sammy Thornwood, a shy but brilliant hedgehog, as he takes on an unexpected challenge during the village's biggest winter event, the Inventor's Fair. Join us for a tale of courage, friendship, and finding your voice when it matters most. This is Sammy's speech. Frost sparkled on the branches around Willowbrook Hollow, where icicles hung from rooftops and smoke curled from chimneys. Lanterns shaped like tiny gears dangled from tree limbs, lighting the pathways that led to the gathering grove. Every winter, the village hosted the Inventor's Fair, an event that sparked everyone's creativity. On this chilly morning, villagers hammered signs into the snow and tested gear-shaped lights. Sammy Thornwood, a shy hedgehog, stood near the entrance with blueprints stuffed in his satchel. His mother, Mayor Poppy Thornwood, wore a cozy scarf and called out orders, her breath puffing in the frosty air. "Sammy!" A cheerful voice cut through the bustle. It was Delia Waddle, his friend, a duck who currently seemed to be juggling one too many tasks. Her clipboard rattled as she hurried to him. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Sammy shifted on his paws. "Hi, Delia." Delia took a quick breath. "I signed us up to present the wind glider at the Inventor's Fair. You designed it, so you should explain how it works." Sammy's heart pounded. Me? Present? In front of all those people?" Her excited grin flickered. "Oh, Sammy, I'm sorry. I know it's scary, but you're the expert. People need to hear your ideas." She laid a gentle wing on his shoulder. "You don't have to do it alone. Oliver Swiftstream said he'd help too." Sammy frowned. Oliver was a fox known for diving headfirst into every idea, sometimes without thinking. I can't do it," he muttered. He might ruin everything, and I'll be stuck talking to a huge crowd." "Sammy Thornwood, Mayor Thornwood," his mother said. "Promise me you'll think about it. You've worked so hard on this invention." Sammy's cheeks burned. He managed a nod, even though his chest felt tight. He had worked hard, but right now, he wanted to vanish. That evening, in their cozy den, Sammy slumped at his workbench. The smell of cinnamon tea wafted from the kitchen, and the flicker of the fireplace danced across scattered blueprints. Instead of making final tweaks, Sammy stared at nothing, his pulse racing whenever he pictured the fair's crowd. Mayor Thornwood entered and placed a steaming mug beside him. "You seem worried," she said gently. Sammy nodded. I keep thinking about messing up. What if I freeze on stage, or my mind goes blank?" His mother opened a small wooden box and took out a smooth carved star. "This was your father's. He was nervous about speeches too, and holding this reminded him even a little light can shine in the dark." Sammy turned the star over in his paw. He got scared too?" She smiled. "Everyone does in their own way." She pressed it into his paw. "Try something physical when you're anxious, like slow breathing." She inhaled deeply, and Sammy copied her rhythm. After a few rounds, his chest eased a bit. Mayor Thornwood took a slip of paper. "Your father also wrote short, encouraging sentences whenever he was afraid, like, 'I can do hard things.' Then he read them aloud." Sammy picked up a pencil. In careful handwriting, he wrote, "I can share my invention." He whispered it a few times, feeling a tiny spark of confidence. Then he tucked the paper back into his pocket beside the star. The next morning, the gathering grove buzzed with activity. A fresh blanket of snow shimmered under lantern light. Sammy arrived with a tangle of nerves in his stomach, gripping his carved star in one hand and his note in the other. Oliver Swiftstream, an energetic fox, balanced on a wooden crate, adjusting a gear-shaped lantern. He hopped down with surprising grace and landed in front of Sammy. There's the genius, he said, giving Sammy a playful nudge. Ready to amaze everyone? Sammy swallowed. Not exactly. Oliver rummaged in a burlap sack. Look at this. He pulled out a homemade fan with gears and wires sticking out. I call it the Wind Wizard 3000. He cranked it, sending a gust of wind over the display table. A tiny model of the wind glider lifted into the air and fluttered gracefully before landing. Sammy blinked. That's actually pretty cool. Pretty cool? It's awesome, Oliver teased. And it'll show your glider wings perfectly. Sammy managed to smile. The wings have to be angled just right to catch the breeze. Which will tell the crowd. Come on, we should practice. Sammy's paws shook as he pulled out his note cards. I wrote everything down so I wouldn't forget. Oliver plopped onto a stool, his tail swishing. Okay, pretend I'm the crowd. Sammy cleared his throat, voice shaking. Hello, everyone. I'm Sammy Thornwood, and... He lost his place and dropped the cards. Oliver hopped up and patted his shoulder. It's okay. You're not failing. You're learning, he grinned sheepishly. I used to hide behind drums when my family played music in public. But my dad said people want to see what we can do, not laugh at us. Sammy took a deep breath, recalling his mother's advice. So maybe the audience wants to learn about the glider instead of waiting for me to fail? Exactly, Oliver said. Just talk about the cool stuff, like how you stabilized the wings. They kept practicing in short bursts. Each time Sammy fumbled, he paused, took a deep breath, touched the star in his pocket, and silently read his note. He tried again, stumbling less each round. Oliver whooped at each success. By mid-afternoon, Sammy's words came more naturally. That evening, Sammy double-checked the glider. A soft draft drifted under the door, and the windows were coated in patterns of ice. Mayor Thornwood peeked over his shoulder. Making sure everything's perfect? She asked. Sammy nodded. Delia will pilot the full-size version. I don't want it to wobble. His mother nodded thoughtfully. When I have important work, I set a timer for 5 minutes to worry. Once it's done, I switch to a calmer mindset. Sammy raised an eyebrow. Does it work? She shrugged. It reminds me that worry isn't forever. Once I've spent time being anxious, I can focus on solutions. Mayor Thornwood set a tiny hourglass on the table. As the sand trickled down, Sammy spilled all his fears about forgetting lines, the glider failing, or Oliver causing chaos. When the last grain of sand fell, he exhaled slowly. I can do hard things, he said out loud, recalling his father's words. His mother smiled and hugged him. Yes, you can. Now, try to rest. The next morning, the Inventor's Fair arrived, and Willowbrook Hollow glittered with excitement. Villagers crowded the gathering grove, admiring ice sculptures and sipping spicy cider. Behind a curtain decorated with painted gears, Sammy paced, gripping his carved star. Delia Waddle flipped through her notes, wearing tiny flight goggles perched on her head. Sammy, she said, noticing his trembling hands. My grandma taught me a little trick. Wiggle your feathers, or pretend you have some, and imagine a warm blanket around you. Sammy closed his eyes and pictured a soft, comforting blanket on his shoulders. After a few moments, he felt his breath steady. Oliver poked his head in, spinning his fan's crank. We're on. Delia marched onto the stage, greeting the crowd.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've always dreamed of flying, but one of my wings doesn't work right. I tried feathers, leaves, nothing worked, till I met Sammy Thornwood.
Sammy gulped and stepped forward. The crowd felt huge. He squeezed the star in his pocket and peeked at his note. I can share my invention. Delia gestured to him.
Sammy's the brilliant mind behind the wind glider, which can help almost anyone soar.
Oliver hopped to the center, proudly unveiling the Wind Wizard 3000. A burst of air blew across the table. Sammy found his voice. We angled the wings to catch the wind just enough to lift the glider. A tail fin helps keep it balanced. Oliver set a miniature glider into the breeze. It soared, drawing gasps and applause.
See? Oliver exclaimed. Stable enough for Delia to fly.
The audience laughed and cheered. Sammy felt a burst of warmth. He lifted his head a little higher, continuing with more confidence. When Delia pilots the larger glider, the same design principle applies. Good wing angles and a sturdy tail. It's not magic, it's science and practice. Delia showed off a pretend steering motion, and the crowd applauded again. By the end, the cheers thundered through the gathering grove. Sammy's heart raced, but now it felt like excitement instead of dread. Afterward, villagers crowded around the display. They asked Sammy questions about the glider, congratulated him, and admired Delia's spirit. Oliver nudged Sammy playfully. We did it. Feeling okay? Sammy exhaled, pressed the star through his pocket. Actually, I feel great. I was sure I'd panic, but it went so much better. Nearby, a young squirrel fiddled with a small windmill, looking ready to cry. Sammy knelt beside her. You all right? He asked. She shook her head.
I'm supposed to show my windmill, but I'm scared of talking.
Sammy remembered how his stomach had felt. I know how that is. Want to learn a trick? She nodded. He guided her through slow breathing in counts of 3, in and out. Then he wrote on a scrap of paper, I can talk about my windmill. Keep this in your pocket, he said gently. When you get nervous, read it, and remember you made something special. Her eyes brightened.
Thank you. I'll try.
Oliver grinned at Sammy. Look at you, Professor Precision. Helping the next generation. Sammy smiled back. It felt good to offer someone the same kindness he received. Later, as the lanterns glowed overhead and the crowd thinned, Sammy stood under the gently falling snow. He let the quiet settle around him. Memories of sweaty palms and a pounding heart were replaced by a calm pride. He thought of his mother's advice, Oliver's support, and Delia's encouragement. He pictured his father's carved star, reminding him that a small light can guide you through the darkest fear. Mayor Thornwood approached, wrapping an arm around him. I'm so proud of you, she whispered, her voice full of warmth. Sammy leaned into her hug. He realized something important. Being scared and being brave can exist at the same time. And with friends who help you find your footing, you might shine brighter than you ever dreamed. The moral of the story? Facing fears becomes more manageable when you use calming tools and lean on supportive friends. You can be scared and brave at the same time. With practice, patience, and kind support, you might soar higher than you ever imagined. Thank you for joining us on Sammy's journey of bravery and growth. From fear to confidence, he learned that being scared and being brave can happen at the same time, and with support, you can shine brighter than ever. Remember, facing your fears can lead to amazing things. What challenges will you take on next? Good night.